unfortunately, this may be a new drink for many people in the audience. It's water. And
Most Americans aren't using it.
Some huge percentage of Americans are chronically dehydrated. People should be drinking around 10 cups of water a day on average, given age and athleticism and things like that. But most people are only drinking like 2 or 3. And so if you have headaches, if you're feeling tired, if you don't have great energy, water solves that.
We're going to start with the cheers instead of ending with the cheers. Cheers to Nick for being on the show today. I'm going to have a sip of my water because I probably am not caught up on my intake today.
And wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast, maybe grab some water.
Grab some water while you listen. I love it. Today in the studio, here we are at the Something New show where we like to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And I am here with my good friend, Nick Hutchison. And I want to tell you about him. He's a visionary force behind BookThinkers, a thriving 7-figure marketing agency bridging authors and readers. In just over 7 years, he has cultivated a platform reaching over 1 million people monthly and hosts the top 2% global podcast called BookThinkers, Life-Changing Books, featuring interviews with renowned authors like Grant Cardone, Lewis Howes, and Rory Vaden. Nick's platform and services have empowered countless authors to reach millions of readers, driving substantial revenue growth. His services encompass video production, podcast booking, and social media brand building. With a mission to inspire readers to take action, Nick authored an amazing book called Rise of the Reader, delving into mastering reading habits and applying newfound knowledge to unlock potential. So that's how I met you. You were doing that very thing when I got to meet you in Nashville. So I just think it's awesome that you are all about books. So tell me what you think about books, Nick.
Well, what might surprise most people is that when I was growing up, I was actually not much of a reader. So I was more of the athlete stereotype. I played football, I wrestled. You couldn't pay me to read a book. I was the worst student ever. But moving forward, kind of like up to today, I believe that the right book at the right time can change our lives permanently. I believe there's a book to solve every single problem that we deal with as human beings. And so when we're talking about something new might be reading. It might be something that somebody in the audience is like, yeah, I haven't read a book since high school or college. And I think that's sad. And I'm here to solve that problem.
I love it. Well, and some people might think, oh, I have to actually physically have the book copy. You can listen to books on audio nowadays. It's not like you have to have the physical copy of the book.
Yes, but. Can I say the but?
Yeah,
and
tell
I hope
me.
You don't get mad at me.
Tell me.
80% of the inputs to our brain are visual.
Okay.
So by default, if you're only listening to information and you're multitasking, you're at a disadvantage. So yes, I believe books can change your life, and I am a big fan of audiobooks, but audiobooks don't replace the physical books. That's
okay, so then I have a question for you.
Yes.
What about Kindle? What do you think about reading on Kindle versus a hard copy?
I think Kindle is great. I think that each one has its own benefits and its own downsides. So on a Kindle, for instance, you can highlight in real time, you can export your notes, you can take notes, you can look up definitions, you can fit 1,000 books in your pocket, you won't break your back carrying a bunch of books when you travel. Like, all those are amazing benefits. But a physical paper book, you can take notes in, it's multi-sensory. When you finish the book and it goes back up on your shelf, it's almost like a trophy. It's like a reminder of the problem that you've overcome or the thing that you learned. And so it being in your environment, for me, I love that. And I also kind of like the smell of a new book.
So at home, do you have a huge room full of books? I can only imagine, with your industry of reading books for a living, what does your book library look like?
So my wife and I bought a new home about 1.5 years ago, and the home had this big 3rd floor loft area, like a big open space. And I said, I want to build my own library. And so we had somebody come in and build like floor to ceiling bookshelves. And that wall is kind of my favorite wall in our house. And I don't know, it has 1,000 books on it or something. But
and is there room for more?
Not really, no. But I have other bookshelves in that space, and those are full. So anyway, we give away a lot of books.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what, can I ask you, the genesis of this whole process for you? Was there one book that started it all?
So when I was going into my senior year of college, I went to the University of New Hampshire. I was studying business. I had just wrapped up running my own house painting business for 2 summers, door-to-door sales, tough. And so I thought, okay, before I graduate college, I want to get some experience working for somebody else. So I went to a job fair, and I ended up finding an internship at a local software company. It was a sales internship. And the owner of the company is the one that hired me, but on day one, the sales director was like, I don't want this kid. I was a little bit of a cocky, know-it-all, 20-something-year-old, and he saw that I was a little rough around the edges. And so we went on a local sales trip one day, and he introduced me to podcasting. So he was the first person that showed me that successful business people oftentimes give all of their secrets away for free on business podcasts. And so I was commuting about 1 hour each way, 5 days a week, so 10 hours a week in the car. And he just said to me one day, he's like, Nick, listening to the same song or the same playlist for the 500th time, it's not going to change your life, but the right podcast might. And so I started listening to shows, and I realized very quickly that successful business people, oftentimes, they'd give at least some credit for their success to the books that they had read. And also I realized a lot of times people were being interviewed because they had just written a book. And those books were condensing decades of their lived experience into days of reading.
Yeah.
All their greatest secrets available for $20 in a few hours of your time. So the first book I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I haven't looked back since. I read about 500 physical books in my 20s.
How much time do you spend reading a day?
It depends. I mean, it is my full-time job. So if you're listening to this and this number sounds a little crazy, don't look down upon yourself. Like, you probably don't read full-time, but around 2 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours.
Okay. But if it's not a full-time job for someone, what would be a good practice?
I think 15 minutes twice a day is the best place to start.
Okay.
So in about 15 minutes of, I'll kind of back up a little bit. In my line of work, sometimes I'll meet people and they'll say to me, hey, Nick, I appreciate your love of books. I get that these books will solve my problems, but I can't read. I'm too busy. I'm not much of a reader. I haven't read a book in a long time, so probably not for me. And I'll say, well, what if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month? Do you think you could do it? And that same person who just told me, no, Nick, I'm not a reader, they're like, well, I could read 5, right? So it's never a question of whether or not we can read, but it's a question of whether or not we value reading enough to prioritize it over the other things in our calendar. So now that we're on the same playing field, okay, reading can be valuable. How do I do it? 15 minutes twice a day. Instead of trying to find the time to read, I recommend replacing 15 minutes of your morning Instagram scrolling and the first 15 minutes of your evening Netflix or HBO or whatever you're watching, sports, something like that. And in 15 minutes, you can read about 10 pages. You do that twice a day, 20 pages a day, 5 days a week, that's 100 pages a week. And most of these books are only around 200 pages nowadays. So that's a book every single month, 2 books every single month, just by replacing a little bit of social media in the morning and a little bit of Netflix in the evening. So 30 minutes is about 1% of your day. That's not that much.
No. And my question is also thinking about, are you reading the same book consecutively, or do you like to read 2 books at the same time?
It changes over time, but I like to read multiple books at the same time. I like to have a couple of different physical books open, and I'm also listening to 1 or 2 different audiobooks during my commutes and things like that. So I still listen to audiobooks because I think they're more valuable sometimes than music or something like that in the car. And then also some books that are super long, I listen to because they intimidate me to read them.
Or there's books like by Matthew McConaughey, whose voice is so fun to listen to that you're like, oh, that's fun. Or Brene Brown. I love when really great speakers are voicing their books, because then I also hear their intonation around what they wrote.
Yes, I agree 1,000%. So Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey is one of my favorite audiobooks. Will by Will Smith, one of my favorite audiobooks. And these people are trained voice actors. And so the experience is a lot of fun to listen to.
So fun.
Yeah. But so going back to the multiple books thing, I think people get this wrong sometimes. They think they have to read one book cover to cover. They can't deviate. They can't take a break. They can't read other books. But there's something unique that happens when you combine kind of 2 random subjects from 2 totally random books and just play with the concepts together. I give the example in my book, if you're reading a book on leadership and it's talking about delegation, and that's the section that you're at, and you're also reading a book about intermittent fasting and dieting, and that's the section that you're at, play around with combining the 2 ideas, like intermittent delegation. Instead of delegating daily, delegate once per week and see if that improves your employees kind of receiving the new tasks you're giving them. You never would have come up with it if you didn't play around with these 2 totally different ideas, one a business leadership book and one a dieting book or something like that. So I love to practice kind of combining ideas from different books.
I like that. And I'm also thinking about people that are maybe always reading one genre. Like I had a decade of my life that I was literally always reading self-help genre books, you know, like leadership, whatever it is. But there is so much to take away from other genres. So if many of my listeners are trying to already improve themselves and read all those books, what would be a nice complementing, you know, wine? What would be a nice wine for their dinner plate here? A nice alternative to supplement with their self-help books?
I will say that most of the books that I'm reading and reviewing are in the self-help category, but I try to read across different disciplines in self-help. So how can you improve yourself? Well, you can improve your relationships. You can improve your health and your fitness. You can improve your mindset. You can improve your business and different aspects of your business. There's sales and communication and all sorts of things that you can work on. There's spirituality. You can improve your relationship to God or some other thing in your life. So I think reading across those different disciplines and combining ideas can be important. I'm not much of a fiction reader, but when I do read fiction, it's science fiction. I like a couple books like that. And so I do think fiction has its value. Sometimes it's a more accurate representation of reality because somebody's not trying to promote themselves or talk about how great they are. You can kind of get into some cool narratives. And then also, fiction is one of the only places that the impossible can become possible with a stroke of the pen. And that's creativity, and I love that. So yeah, combine all sorts of things and see what works for you.
Interesting. Well, and I'm just thinking about how reading is such an affordable way to be mentored by that top leadership expert or that top fitness expert or whatever that you might never meet or have the ability to be up close to. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you found this with all of you. You've read way more than I've read. But my point is like, I can honestly say there's some authors that are some of my greatest life mentors. And I'm like, I've never even met them. Mm-hmm. Like there might be people listening to this podcast that might never meet you or me, but hopefully we're dropping something in their lap that's like, oh, I need that in my life. That's a good like thing. I want to apply it. So how have you been able to like say, hey, reading can actually develop you as a business owner or as a parent or whatever?
In so many ways. Can I share a quick story first about a TED Talk I watched one time? So I watched a TED Talk given by Ty Lopez. Ty is an internet marketer. He's famous for the "Here in My Garage with the Lamborghini" video that went around YouTube a few years ago. Some people love him, some people hate him, but the following lesson was tremendously valuable for me. So I'm watching this TED Talk, and Ty says to the audience, he says, "How much would you pay to come over my house next week for a private mastermind?" And Arnold Schwarzenegger will be there talking about bodybuilding. Steve Jobs will be there talking about innovation. Oprah will be there talking about overcoming her story and growing this popular TV network. Gandhi will be there talking about peace. Mother Teresa will be there talking about giving, and like the list goes on. And people are throwing out these wild numbers. And at the end of it, he says, okay, well, obviously these people aren't over my house next weekend. Half of them aren't alive anymore, but I do have a library full of their books written by them, books written about them that detail their decision-making and greatest life lessons. And it's available for a heck of a lot less money than the numbers everybody was throwing out, right? Tens of thousands of dollars to go to that private mastermind.
Right?
Or millions. Yeah, but the books are $20 a piece, and you can access them instantly on Kindle or audio. And so I just think you can like really access the world's greatest mentors in every single discipline because great people have books written about them and great people write books. So that's how it can transform us. Like we can literally get access to the world's best information.
This episode is sponsored by Something Blue 30A. Looking for the perfect vacation spot to disconnect from everything, put your feet in the softest sand, and enjoy a fresh, renovated 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse right on the beach in my favorite place in the world? Well, 30A is situated in the Panhandle of Florida, and I'd love for you to check out Something Blue 30A on Instagram and make it the perfect place for your next vacation. It is a new day when it comes to this because there's never been a time with more resources out there for such an attainable price point. Mm-hmm. I don't think it matters your income level when it comes to knowledge because even so much that's taught in universities on YouTube. I'm just saying, like there is so much more available for either for free or a $20 book that you, in our lifetime, we have seen, like when I was younger, there was never the amount of books, the amount of courses, the amount of education available for $20 to read about or to learn from these people and experts as there is today. And so it's kind of like, it's really cool that it's so much more attainable than it used to be.
I think so too. And I do view success through a holistic lens. So what I'm about to say is just an example of how you can be successful. But when you look at people like Bill Gates, he's famous for taking a reading vacation every year where he just reads for 2 straight weeks and then he pushes out the list. The guy's worth $100 billion and he dedicates weeks of his life every year to reading books and learning. Warren Buffett is famous for spending something like 80% of his workday reading information, and he's one of the richest people on the planet. Elon Musk, when he was younger, would have to get pulled out of the local library because he was just in his zone reading with tunnel vision. These successful people, financially, that's just one example, they read books, they read information, they consume as much as possible. And so there's never a point where you go, oh, I'm smart enough to stop reading. Because there's like one of the humbling things about reading books, personal development, business, nonfiction type information is that the more you read, the more you realize the less you actually know about the world. Like it's a humbling experience.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
My dad used to always say that too. He's like, there's always, the person you're speaking with always knows more than you about something.
Absolutely.
So make sure you approach them with full respect in the sense that like, hey, what is it that they might know more about that I don't? So I love meeting new people, and it doesn't matter like what socioeconomic class they might be from or whatever, because he's absolutely right. It's like that person does know more about one thing at least than you do, and to never think of yourself more highly than you ought.
Yeah, we all have so much potential to grow and learn if we stay curious. And now I wasn't always this way, right? I shared that I was a poor student. I was kind of a know-it-all. Like I thought I was the coolest kid in the room. But then you realize over time, like you've said, that so many people have so much information to share. And so in general, I kind of abide by this rule of 25% that I came up with, which is I try to spend 25% of my time with mentors, people who have done what I want to do in life and have done it really well and helped other people get there. But like you highlighted, you can't always access these people in person. Like Tony Robbins is too busy to spend time with every single person that wants to spend time with him. But you can read his books and you can listen to podcast interviews and take courses and all that kind of stuff. So that's 25%. I recommend everybody spend 25% of their time with peers, people who are on a similar mission in life, because you get a lot of energy from accountability, people who can hold you accountable. You can cross-pollinate ideas, like becoming a member of your course, for instance, the bridal shop course, like all of those people feed off of each other and reinforce everybody. Like that's just so important. And so 25% of your time with mentors, 25% with peers. The next quarter of your time, I recommend giving back, mentoring other people. Studies show that we retain so much more of what we learn if we end up teaching it to other people. It forces us to simplify the information, kind of rework it on our brains before we project it. And all of those are forms of repetition, and repetition leads to retention. And then the last bucket of time is 25% of your time with yourself. And that's a weird one for a lot of people. There's a great quote, I think, by George Bernard Shaw, where he says, all of man's problems stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room for 20 minutes or something like that. And it's the idea of meditation and journaling and mindfulness and reading some of these other books and spending time with your family a little bit, like outside of the world of business. I think it's really important for rejuvenation, exercise, all that good stuff.
I can totally resonate that my best ideas have come when I was sitting still in my house or just woke up and I'm the only one awake, and it's just like all the clarity is there because there's no other distractions. Or even, this is a funny place, but a lot of times when I'm getting a massage, like nobody's talking to me, and I don't get them all the time, but it's like when you get them, it's like the quiet, like your mind is totally now beyond the tasks. And it's almost like when you're fully relaxed, the fresh ideas and new vision can come in. I think people get ideas in the shower. I've also talked to tons of entrepreneurs that get ideas on an airplane because their phones are turned off. Like we joke, I have this friend, we joke that like we're going to write our books on a flight, not together because we can't be on the same flight, we'll talk, but just book a flight, like a 10-hour flight. We'll write the first half of the book, get off the plane, get a good night's sleep, have a good meal, write the second half on the way home, because it's so undistracted, clear, like you're up above, there's nothing blocking you. So that's the time with yourself that really allows you, if you're I feel like if you're blocked with decision making, or it's been a while since you've had a good idea to maybe, put in your business, and you're facing a problem that you're just like, I can't figure out how to solve it. It is helpful to have mentors, right? But sometimes you just need to sit with it. You need to sit with that problem and be like, hey, what do I know? Like, what do I know is right or to be true based on my experiences? And going forward, what can I implement or change? And when we have so many busyness things around us distracting us, I don't think we have clear thought. So when I have really big decisions to make for my business, I have to get alone.
Did you have any breakthrough ideas on your last flight? Because you flew like yesterday, right?
I always do. Well, yesterday's flight was a little different because I was with 80 eighth graders and that was just much different flying home from their class trip from DC. But yeah, when I fly by myself for business, I always have a business idea, and poor Liz who works for me, because I come home with 10 more things that I want to do.
So flying is where I get a ton of reading done, because I do fly a lot, and I always, like, people always ask me, hey, where's your favorite place to read? And it's not at my house. It's not in my reading nook or in my library. It's actually while flying. So I'm with you. I get a lot of great work done. I wrote most of my book actually while flying around as well. So there's something about being up in the air with limited distractions, sitting in the same seat. You have to kill time. And so you just focus. And I love that as well.
I love it. Okay. What are some habits? I know a lot of people may or may not know this about you. I know they think of you as the reading expert and book like endorser in a way. It's like, these are the books I loved and why, which is so fun to watch your Instagram. Tell everybody what your Instagram is.
At BookThinkers, spelled just like it sounds. And we put out new nonfiction book related content every day.
I love watching it. Like, I'm always like, oh, if you're not sure where to start and what book to read, just go spend about an hour going down the rabbit hole on your account, because then you're gonna be like, oh, that's the book I want to read based on all your reviews. So I love that. But what people might not know about you is a lot of your health habits. You have become extremely focused and just lasered in on all the high performance habits that make you stronger, healthier, so that you can, as entrepreneurs, perform at a higher level, can get more done in a day, can be your best that you can be with all the people you're with. So I just have a question. Was it a book that inspired you to get serious about your health, or was it many? And what are some of the first things you did, and where are you now when it comes to your health journey?
To answer your first question, I think it was many. I've interviewed a lot of very high performers, a lot of very wealthy people, and I started to realize, both by interviewing them and reading about them, that a lot of people who achieve success financially, they're failing in the other areas of their life. They have terrible relationships. They're not healthy. The not healthy piece was very clear to me for some reason. And I thought, you know what? I view success through a more holistic lens.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be healthy, wealthy, and happy, not just wealthy at the expense of the other two. And so I started to pay more attention to my energy and people who sort of had it all. And the people that had it all, success holistically, they were paying attention to their health in a major way. I also just really got into the subject of longevity, and people who live for a long time can contribute more to society and give more back because they have more years on this planet.
And be with their family.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So I started reading widely about this subject. I've read dozens and dozens and dozens of books and implemented dozens and dozens and dozens of different things. But I show up as my best self when I have the most amount of energy. And I have the most amount of energy when I'm eating healthy, when I'm exercising, when I'm going through my routines, and when I'm promoting and talking about health and fitness. Like, I really, really, really love it. And so, yeah, it brings me a lot of energy, and it helps me have a better relationship with my wife. It helps me have better business relationships. It helps me, just all over,
Yeah. So what were some of the first things you changed when you got serious about your health?
I think that waking up earlier and installing a morning routine that brings me energy, that was really the first thing. And shout out to Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning. That was one of the first books that helped me design a morning routine that served me.
Can you share your morning routine?
Yes. So today, the first thing that I do when I wake up is I go on about a 1 hour walk with my dog. And so I take my dog to a park that's about 5 minutes away. It's this big, open, wooded area. And we walk for about an hour. No music, no podcasts, nothing like that.
And
no
even if you're
conversation.
traveling, do you find a place to walk?
I try to most mornings, unless there's a big time zone change and I need to be somewhere. But The exercise endorphins that you get while walking, those are great for cognitive function. The kind of silent meditation and being with my own thoughts, that's a really important part of my morning routine. And then also getting sunlight before I consume caffeine helps to minimize that caffeine kind of crash that you might get later in the day. And so all of those are things that I do right off the bat. And then I go to the gym. So at the gym, I'm doing kind of more strength exercises. I love being at the gym. When I'm at the gym, I'll listen to some motivational music or a podcast or something like that to get me in the zone. So now the first two things I've done are I've gone on a walk and I'm drinking water and getting sunlight and meditating, walking meditation. Then I'm going to the gym and like really getting the exercise endorphins flowing, which will really help kick off my day. Then after I go back home and I change and I shower, then I do the whole red light therapy with meditation and all of that kind of fun stuff. At certain times I'm journaling, but then I'll typically jump right into gratitude and reading. So then I'll read for a little while, and all of that happens before my day starts. I'm also doing all of this fasted. So I used to eat in the morning, now I don't eat in the morning. I have so much more energy when I'm operating from a fasted state. I'm more cognitively clear. I don't know, like I'm more energized for the day. So
Do you think that's true for everyone, or is it just true for you?
I think it's true for a lot of men. I know women respond differently from a hormone perspective when fasted and have different kind of ideal fasting windows. But for me, it definitely works.
When do you start eating?
It varies. Like Luke and I did a 3-day fast recently. I mean,
but just in general, like after the reading in the morning, or?
No, most of the time I start eating a little bit after noon. So I'll break my fast with an Athletic Greens shake, which is like a multivitamin and probiotic shake. And then I'll wait about a half an hour and then I'll eat. So I have the same lunch every day. I have a Greek salad every day of the week when I'm at home at least.
Yeah, I love Greek salads.
Yeah. In my Greek salads, I meal prep them once a week and they have like 20 different ingredients and all the good stuff in there. And then I'll stop eating after dinner. So ideally I'm getting at least 16 hours fasted. And there are so many reasons that I do that. But the main reason is that I just feel really good when I'm exercising and when I'm working in the morning while I'm fasted.
Cool. Now let's talk about your totally all in wife, kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you do that when you have a wife and kids?
Yeah, well, my wife is very supportive. I mean, we have our first kid on the way, so I'm sure that's going to change a little bit.
Yeah.
But my wife is very supportive. She's into all of these things with me. She's into the biohacking and she likes all the routine. She doesn't participate in all of the morning routine. She gets a little bit more sleep than I do, but she's totally supportive of all of it.
And do you guys eat similarly so it's easy to prep and everything?
Yeah, we do. Well, that's actually not 100% true. She loves variety and I love convenience. So like she'll have a different lunch every day, but I mean, we share dinner. We share the same dinner every night, but she won't do the Greek salad every day at lunch like I will.
You're like, I just need simple and get it done.
Yeah, and she did a lot of intermittent fasting up until she was pregnant and then didn't feel great with it. So she eats a lot earlier in the mornings now. But I think it's important to have, like, I do believe that discipline equals freedom. But I also think that you need to be aware and kind of respond to the different inputs. And so if you're feeling hungry and you're not performing well, sometimes you need to switch it up. Yeah.
Can you tell me a crazy story, jumping back into your business, where you interviewed someone that you never thought you'd interview? Like, how did you find them, get them on your podcast, or maybe a book that you're like, this changed my life, I'm going to talk to them and tell them this? Like, what's like a crazy, because you just seem like a real, like, I'll figure it out kind of person. Like, if that's something that I want to go for, like, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll go pre-podcast to answer this question. Then I'm happy to give some podcast stories as well. So when I had just started BookThinkers and it was still very much a side hustle, I read a book called The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And this is a wonderful business parable that teaches 5 kind of core lessons. One I was telling you about earlier today, which is the reciprocal relationship between giving and receiving. And so anyway, I fell in love with this book. I mean, it has sold over 1 million copies and it's pretty popular, but I reached out to the author on Instagram and I knew that he was from Florida, Bob Burg. And I was staying in Jacksonville and he was all the way down in Jupiter. So it was like a 5-hour drive. And I hit him up and I said, hey, would you like to get coffee? I should have asked for lunch, but I said, would you like to get coffee? And I couldn't afford at the time to like go get a hotel the night before. So that morning, I think I woke up at like 2 a.m. or something like that and drove the 5 hours to meet him for a 7 a.m. coffee. And then we just hung out for hours and hours and hours and talked. And I shared all about how the book changed my life, and
And you didn't even have BookThinkers at the time, and this author was willing to make time for you?
Yes.
Any tips on that message you sent?
I should go back and look at it. That would actually bring back a lot of cool memories. I'll give you some tips on the podcast side of things, though, because I interviewed all of my favorite authors within the first 10 to 20 episodes. But yeah, Bob Berg was just such a generous person, and he was so willing to meet up and have coffee and give all these lessons. Now, I shared all these cool details with me. He was very inquisitive, asked a lot of questions about my family and my background and my profession. And BookThinkers was just starting, so my plans for it. 2 years later, I interviewed him on my podcast, and before I press record, he was asking all these follow-up questions as if it was yesterday. Like he knew all these details about me.
Yeah.
And so I paused and I was like, what CRM are you using? Like, how do you keep track of all this
keep track of me?
information? Yeah. But it was in a CRM, and he took amazing notes after I left coffee and everything like that. It was just such a cool business lesson.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
that was like BookThinkers was around, but it was really small.
Who were the people that you're like, in the first year I got him on my podcast?
Yeah. So episode number 1 was with a mentor of mine, Evan Carmichael, and he kind of gave me the roadmap moving forward. But episode 2 was with Russell Brunson. He was one of my favorite authors.
Wow.
Yeah. Jim Quick was episode number 3. He's one of my favorite authors. Grant Cardone was episode number 9. He's one of my favorites. Vanessa Van Edwards, who we were talking about before. And all of these people showed up really early, which was fun. And I'm happy to share some of those strategies.
Yeah, I would love to hear how you got these amazing people. I mean, just for people that are maybe, let's even scale that down, right? Maybe there's just somebody that they think, oh, they would never make time for me, but they might. Like, what would you say? Hey, if you want to reach out to someone and take them to coffee, maybe not ask them for a long-term mentor commitment, but you just want to have a moment to say, thanks for your work. It's really inspired me, completely changed my life. Would you have a time for a coffee? Like, what would you say to someone?
All right. So at the risk of being long-winded, I'll try to make some of these stories short, but I love talking about this subject. So still very early stages BookThinkers. Like I had a couple thousand followers. I was doing some book reviews. I was in New York City for my other job. And there was an author that I had read recently. His name's Anthony Lawley. He wrote a book called The Heart of the Deal. He's a real estate guy. And I was just getting into real estate, so I read the book and I loved it. And I remembered reading that he was in New York. So I was in New York on business. I had a little bit of extra time. So I hit him up on Instagram DMs. I had like a couple thousand followers. He had like a bazillion. And I just said, hey, I'm in New York tomorrow. I have some free time. I'd love to meet up for a coffee. So he said yes. And I went to go get coffee with him. And I remember asking him, and I'll keep the number secret, but I remember asking him, I'm like, hey man, I read that you just exited like all these huge positions. How much money do you have in your bank accounts? Like how liquid are you? And he said a number that blew my mind. I mean, it was just unimaginable. And then I asked him, hey, by the way, why'd you get coffee with me? Like I'm a nobody. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, why are you getting coffee with me? He goes, nobody's ever asked. And I was like, you're famous. You're worth all this money. You're an author. Nobody's ever asked you to get coffee through Instagram. He's like, no. He was like, you'd be shocked at how few DMs I get per day. And so I started to think about my own business. And as I started my podcast, I started to leverage this idea that like famous people actually aren't getting DMs. And I remember when I had...
Well, and I want to say why. In my opinion, I don't even think they're like, I would assume that they're not even running their personal account. But are they?
Yes. And a lot of times they are.
Wow.
And so I remember when BookThinkers had maybe 10 to 20,000 followers, we used to get anywhere between 25 to 50 DMs per day. And I'd answer every single one of them. Now that we have about 200,000 followers, get a couple DMs per day. And it's for the same reason that you just highlighted. You anticipate rejection, and so you don't even reach out. So there's a metaphor that I've heard that kind of sums this up really well for people, which is the hot girl at the bar. Every guy at the bar anticipates rejection, and so they don't even try. They don't even go up. They don't use a pickup line. They don't ask her how she's doing. And at the end of the night, she's left feeling like nobody wanted to talk to me. And it's because every guy was insecure and anticipated rejection. And so I've just kind of carried that into the business world, that all of these super famous people, nobody's reaching out to them because everybody anticipates rejection. The more followers you have, the smaller their percentage of followers that are actually reaching out. It's counterintuitive, but it's true.
Well, and you reminded me of one thing that one of my guests said one time is it's a numbers game. Eventually some girl's going to say yes. So they didn't care. They're like, I'll go up to the hot girl. over and over to many, like I said, because eventually 1 out of 10 will say, sure, I'll give you my number, but if you never even try, like, you're missing the whole game. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you've inspired me to say, hey, like, who are some people that I love to either have on my podcast or, interview about something. It's like, why not just ask? And I don't care. I can be shot down, but I need to start asking.
Yes, you do. Yeah. And here's another strategy. So I mentioned briefly that Evan Carmichael was the first guest on my show. And after we wrapped up recording, I asked him, I said, Evan, how do I go out there and get some of my favorite authors? And he said to me, he goes, use my name. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? He goes, use my name. It might move the needle 1% for the right person. It might move the needle all the way to a yes for the right type of person. So he said, when you're prospecting somebody through social media, click on their profile, click on who they follow. And if you're following me and that person's following me, it's going to show up as a mutual connection. And so when you're reaching out to them, be a surgeon with your words. Surgeons don't make extra cuts while performing surgery. Salespeople shouldn't use extra language while selling. Have a very simple message. Hey, congratulations on the upcoming release of your book. I help interview authors and then insert people that they're already following, the biggest names that you've got mutually that have already been on your show. And I'd love to interview you as well. Here's a link to book. And so I use that formula because if I say to Grant Cardone, hey, Grant, congratulations on the upcoming release of your book. I've helped authors and then insert 3 people that he's collaborated with.
He's like, oh, even though it's episode 9.
He doesn't even ask, though, because he bypasses due diligence.
I love it.
Yeah, if all of your friends are on a show, there's a fear of missing out. If Grant says, well, Evan's already been on, and Russell Brunson's already been on, and Jim Quick's already been on, and I haven't been on yet, I need to be on. All my friends are on the show. And so I started to snowball names. And then once you get somebody like Grant, and you go, hey, Grant's been on my show, everybody else says yes, because his time is worth more than just about anybody else's at the time that we did this podcast. And so I've used this strategy to go out there and get people like Alex Hormozi and Patrick Bet-David and all my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene. And
you just wait until I use that Nick Hutchison name, man.
You can, and it might move the needle 1%, or it could move the needle all the way. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the person that recommended we stand right now.
And who was that? Oh, Vanessa. Yes.
So why are we standing in today's episode?
Shout out to Vanessa Van Edwards.
Yes, I love you if you ever hear my voice.
She will. If you clip this, I'll send it to her.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So Vanessa, I read her original book, Captivate. I was a huge fan of it. I invited her on the podcast. We developed a little bit of an initial relationship. I had probably already interviewed a bunch of people that she knew, which is why she said yes. And then we got a chance to become friends and go on a couple walks in Austin. And then she just spoke at our BookThinkers event last year. So Vanessa's amazing. If anybody in the audience wants a masterclass on human communication and the science of people, that's what she does.
She is the best right now. Literally, that was my undergraduate studies, was all about communication. And I am very just obsessed with great delivery and understanding human behavior and intentions. And I really think the root of all of our problems have come from miscommunications.
Yes.
So ultimately, I do think everyone deep down wants to be understood and is kind. Mm-hmm. But we have so many problems, whether it's your workplace, your family, whatever it might be, due to miscommunication. So she is the boss when it comes to all of those expertise. I've had so many of her videos. I've played for my team in staff trainings. I've put all 25 of my team members around a big, huge TV, and we have watched Vanessa put it on pause, practice what she just said, played some more, role played it out. I mean, she has been a huge influence.
Well, Vanessa, if that testimonial doesn't do it for you, Mindi also has my stamp of approval.
I love it.
You should definitely come to Colorado Springs for an interview. Or I heard Mindi may even travel to Austin.
I would come to you if I got to interview you. It would be a dream. It would be a dream.
Yeah.
But what did she say about standing up on your podcast, and what did you change in your behaviors?
So I think when I interviewed her the first time, I was seated. and she was standing. And I think that I asked her for any feedback. What recommendations would you give me? How can I improve my show? And instead of giving me feedback on the questions or the delivery or the format, she said, you need to stand up. What do you mean I need to stand up? And she's like, your best delivery and your vocal, a whole bunch of words that I don't remember. She's like, it will be so much better when you stand up.
So you're just like, I didn't remember all that stuff. I'll just start standing.
Yes. And at the time, I probably would have remembered it all. But, you know, when you read so much and you receive so much constructive feedback, sometimes you get convinced to make a decision and you understood the proof back then. And now you just have implemented it for so long. So you don't remember all the supporting evidence, but you know that standing up is better.
Well, and can we just talk about how most people do have a work from home job now? It feels like, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like so many of my colleagues, they work from home. And so they're on Zoom, they're doing a lot of presentations or meetings in general. And if you need to be sharp and on your A game, I just wonder how much better it would be if you got a stand-up desk and you delivered your content from a standing position.
Yes, I think a lot better. So it's an easy tip, and they make desks now. Like my desk, it raises, and it goes down. So yeah, there's no excuse.
So my husband and I both have one of those, $100 on Amazon. Nothing fancy, but we love it. And we got a walking pad. Do you have one of those?
Like an under desk treadmill?
Yes.
Yeah. Although I don't keep it under there very often, but I do have one.
Well, it's how you can get your steps if you missed it in the morning in your morning routine.
Yeah, very true. And I also keep, you know what I got recently, like 6 months ago, is a grounding pad for my desk, like that I rest my arms on. Do you know what that is?
Well, I'm assuming, I know about we do grounding.
Yeah. So
maybe for our listeners, if they're like, what are they talking about? So like in the morning, that's part of my morning routine is I step right outside my bathroom and we do grounding in the morning. Yeah.
I love that. I try to do the same thing. If you can't get access to the earth, then there are these grounding pads that you can, I don't know all of the science behind it enough to articulate it well in a podcast, but essentially there's some type of plug that you can plug directly into a wall socket, like an outlet, and it will transfer that same energy to the mat itself so that you're almost replicating standing on the ground outside.
With your arms?
Yeah, with your arms. Or you could stand on it with bare feet, but I'm just at my desk typing all day, so my arms just sit on it. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So I have a question as a friend. What's kind of like the long-term dream with BookThinkers?
That's a great question. I used to think a lot about the future, but right now I've really been optimizing for the present moment. So my business today, it supports my lifestyle. It makes me happy. We're of service to as many people as possible. And I just want to continue to expand exactly what we're doing. So, I mean, today we support authors on one side of things and we support readers on the other. And I just love the positive power of personal development books. And I want to be present and really love my business. I heard this great quote. Somebody said, I can define success in 5 words. They said, enjoying the passage of time. And that's what I'm optimizing for. So I don't want to grow my business too fast where it becomes uncomfortable and creates a bunch of stress. But I also want to make sure that I'm continuing to make progress and implement all the wonderful lessons that I learned from people like you. And so what does the business look like in the future? Like, it's not some big fancy different reality than the one I live in. It's just an expanded version of what I have today. That was a long way of saying that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a team to like, I mean, you already have a team, but I'm saying like more of them doing more of the work that you do.
Yes.
Not necessarily doing something different or whatever. It's doing more of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm continuing to work on my business instead of in my business. So right now, out of the 3 service buckets that we have on the author side of the business, like we come out and we do short form video, and the team can already execute that without me, which is amazing. We do a lot of podcast booking. We're booking for like 50 authors a month right now, which is amazing. So I don't touch that. I don't do any of it. So I've kind of removed myself. But on the book review side of things and the podcast, like I'm very much still involved. So I'll continue to kind of withdraw and take a step back and give other people more responsibility.
And they can do it sometimes even better than you could.
I believe that just like you believe that. And we were joking about that Dan Martell quote earlier, which he says something like 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome. And I love that.
I do too. It takes a little bit of the pressure off of yourself as an entrepreneur to have to do everything, because it's really a lie to say I'm the only one that can do it all. Mm-hmm. It's really a lie. I never want to feel irreplaceable. Like, I do think that there's certain gifts that we're that we bring as the entrepreneur, as a visionary, as the leader of the company. But honestly, every skill set we have, you can find other people that have that and sometimes even better than you.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. You know that quote, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
That's how you want to feel in your own business sometimes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's wonderful advice. So 2 years ago, or 2.5, 3 years ago, I was the only person in the business for a while. And so in order to grow and scale to what we have today, I mean, now between full and part-time people on the team, I think we've got around 10 people, and we're serving hundreds of authors a year. So it's grown quite a bit. And that exponential progression, I hope, just continues to go, but not at an uncomfortable pace, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I still definitely need to withdraw and detract and continue to delegate or hire, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
So room for improvement.
Hey, always. So, okay, well, thanks for coming to Colorado Springs and being on our show today.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. You have such a beautiful studio and
Thank
space.
you.
The boutique's amazing.
Where can we find, like, if people want to stay in touch with you and just the journey that you're on with your company, where can they learn more about you?
So my favorite thing to do is to play book matchmaker. So if somebody's listening to this podcast and they heard the first half and they're like, you know what? Nick convinced me to pick up a book, but I don't know where to start. You could scroll through the Instagram, or you could shoot me a direct message at BookThinkers on Instagram and tell me about a problem that you're facing or maybe a skill that you want to develop, and I will provide a custom book recommendation to you. So that's my call to action for everybody, and there are links in our bio for just about everything else.
That's amazing. I want to do that.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Wait, do you want to do one live?
Oh, we could totally do one live. Okay, let me think about this.
What's a problem that you're facing or a skill that you'd like to develop?
I would like to develop my interest and passion for real estate investing. I really enjoy, buying properties, making them Airbnbs, or, comparatively, sometimes we have commercial properties, whatever. And I've not necessarily read enough about this topic. It's working, but I would love to read more.
So you want to develop your interest and passion. That's a very specific piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually mentioned the book that I'd like to recommend already, which is The Heart of the Deal by Anthony Lawley. Because there are plenty of books that teach the mechanics of real estate investing, but if you want to develop the passion behind real estate investing, like why are you doing it? What need or like service are you fulfilling to the end consumer? I think that's the right book.
Say it one more time.
The Heart of the Deal.
The Heart of the Deal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much for your time today. So if you guys like this episode, please make sure you're subscribing, that you like it, and you share with your friends, because we would love to see you again on more episodes of the Something New Show. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.